Oh, thank you, Rachel and Heidi. Talk about a tough act to follow. Somebody else want to come up here for a while? Oh, we are exploring in recent weeks and in weeks to come the 5 basic principles of what we talk about here at Unity, specifically Unity of the Valley. And I get excited every time I dig into these. I'm kind of new at this. I've only been in Unity for about 35 years. But I'm starting to get kind of a handle on it. And I find that I need to go back and review the basics again and again and again. Not because I didn't get it before, but this little thing called life keeps happening. Anybody else have that experience? It kind of distracts us, doesn't it? And it's great at making us forget to keep our focus on spiritual principles. That's why we do need to revisit them and be with them and invest ourselves in them again and again and again. So you will remember that a few weeks ago, in the first Unity principle, we learned about trust. The principle states God is absolute good, everywhere present. And when we understand this principle, we can trust that God's not some old man watching us from the clouds, waiting to apportion reward or punishment as the mood strikes. We can trust that we have no need to fear some kind of a demanding deity. We can trust that God is a field of infinite intelligence, loving, creative energy, and we live in that field of God. And we can trust that God created a universe that lovingly and generously and benevolently supports us every single day. In the second principle, we learned about self-esteem. We learned that as part of creation, each and every one of us has within us that spark of divinity, that bit of God stuff that is at the very essence of our being. Wow. That's amazing, isn't it? When you look in the mirror, do you see that glorious creation of God? That God stuff just waiting to bubble up and bubble over? How can you be anything but delighted with that person looking back at you from the mirror? And as we step out into the world and meet and connect with other people, they too have God at the core of their being. And so we can respect and honor them as a fellow creation of Mother, Father, God. Now today, we're going to take these first 2 principles and build on them by exploring the third Unity principle, which says simply, we create our experiences by the activity of our thinking. This, my friends, is empowerment or impairment, depending on how exactly you're using the activity of your thinking. We are powerful. Say that with me. We are powerful. And now take it home. I am powerful. I am powerful. Whatever we consistently focus our thoughts and feelings and attentions on, that's what we manifest in our life. And when we wrap ourselves around that empowerment, we begin to realize that it's very freeing. We are freed from any thought or idea that we are in any way, shape, or form a victim. We're freed from any feelings of powerlessness. We're freed from blaming. We begin to understand that we create our life, not some circumstance or some other person. We're free to create the life that we dream about. And inherent in all those freedoms, we are free to accept responsibility for our lives when we realize we have the power to change whatever it is that's been holding us back. With freedom comes responsibility. When I first got to Unity and learned that I could create my life with my thoughts, I was so excited. I felt so empowered. This was the most amazing thing I had ever heard. Can't believe I lived the first 32 years of my life with no idea that I had a say in the matter. The idea of being empowered, the idea of creating our life with our thoughts is exciting. But don't forget to read the fine print. You see, this is a two-edged sword. We consciously create with our thoughts as we conjure up in our mind what we want to create in our life. The flip side is we are also creating with our thoughts as we bemoan the things that are going on in life that we don't like. I mean, really, who hasn't had a bad day? And what do you think? Oh, why is this happening to me again? Why does this always happen to me? We wrap our heads around very human thoughts, forgetting completely that as we do that, we are creating more of it. The power of thought is incredibly empowering, and we can also use it to shoot ourselves in the foot. I have many holes in my feet. I've done it more than once. Years ago, I worked with a woman. I lived in Seattle at the time. I was in the photographic industry, and I called on photo labs. This is back in the olden days when there was this stuff called film. Some of you may remember it. And you took your film to a lab, and they ran it through big machines and with lots of chemicals involved. Just a little aside, I remember going to a photo show once, and the Minolta rep pulled out this camera, this newfangled thing that Minolta was developing at the time called digital photography. So he lined a bunch of us up and took a picture, and it was all kind of grainy and fuzzy, and we looked at him and we said, well, you know, that's kind of interesting, but it'll never replace film. Boy, were we wrong. Now, in my job, I was calling on photo labs in the Northwest and the Seattle and Portland, Oregon areas. I sold the big machines, those great big things, and the chemistry that went with them. And I was introduced to a woman who I think, if I remember right, was aligned with a company called AGFA, who was involved with chemistry and film and paper and all of the supplies that my machine needed. So we started to work together. And I was told one day that I was to meet this woman at a certain photo lab, so I showed up at the photo lab, and I'm visiting with the owner, and we're waiting, and waiting, and waiting, and waiting. And about an hour after the appointed time, this woman I'd never met before comes scurrying in, full of apologies. She's so sorry she's so late, but she got in a fender bender that morning. Then she went on to explain she was accident prone. I thought, well, this is interesting. And we went about our business. We had our meeting. And then we had another business meeting a few weeks later. She was supposed to be there, I was supposed to be there, and well, she showed up on time this time, but now she's on crutches. She'd stumbled, she'd fallen, she'd sprained her ankle. And as she told me this story, she said, you know, I'm just accident prone. If it's going to happen to anyone, it's going to happen to me. Boy, was she right. The third or fourth meeting, a couple months later, her arm's in a cast. She'd fallen, she'd broken her arm. You know, this woman could not understand why I wouldn't allow her to pick me up so I could ride with her. I can't tell you the number of times she said, Laurie, I'm right by you, I'll pick you up and we'll go to our meeting together. And I kept saying, no, I'll meet you there. It was was scared to death to get in the car with her because she was accident prone. And she told everybody, I'm accident prone. She had this deeply ingrained belief that that was the truth of her being. And because she believed it, and because she said it repetitively, she created it again and again and again. Now, she was co-creating with God, whether she knew it or not. She was unconsciously co-creating, because I'm sure it wasn't her heartfelt desire to be in pain and broken and bruised all the time, or paying exorbitant premiums for her auto insurance because she kept totaling them. But she was co-creating with God. She was using this power of thought, but in her case, creating what she really, truly did not want to. I was new to Unity then, and the idea of being empowered and creating with thought was so exciting to me. And boy, was she an incredible lesson on how not to use the power of thought to create. You know, science proves the power of thought for us again and again and again. You've all heard of the placebo effect, right? A sugar pill given by a doctor who tells the patient, this is going to solve your problem. And so the patient goes home and takes the sugar pill and the problem's resolved. They believed that pill had the medicine they needed to feel better. I recently learned there's a corollary to that called the tomato effect. Anybody hear of the tomato effect? Back in the 18th century, they were exploring the power of thought from a scientific perspective, and they realized that telling people this pill is going to make you healthy actually did help make people healthy. And they thought, well, what if the opposite is true? So they told people, tomatoes are poisonous. They will make you ill. And people who ate tomatoes got sick by the hundreds, and many, many people stopped eating tomatoes altogether because they believed, no fact in it, but they believed it was poisonous. How many here have a background in education? I know a lot of you do. Then you know about the Pygmalion effect, don't you? If a teacher believes that their students are capable and intelligent and just sponges for knowledge, what will the students do? They will show capability and ability and capacity for knowledge. And the flip side's also true. If a teacher believes, oh my gosh, I've got the kids in the school with the lowest IQs, what kind of performance is he going to get from those kids? Not a very good performance. The teacher's belief actually affects the people, the children, the students around them. Wisdom teachers of the ages have understood the power of thought to create our world. Here's just a couple. Almost 3,000 years ago, the Buddha said, all we are is a result of what we have thought. All we are is a result of our thoughts. Book of Proverbs tells us, for as he believes in his heart, so he is. Marcus Aurelius said, a man's life is what his thoughts make of it. Darwin Kingsley, I don't know if everybody knows him, in the 1900s, he was a Harvard business grad and an extremely successful businessman. In a very short period of time, he grew a company called New York Life from a $500 million a year company to a $2 billion a year company in 1900. He says, you have powers you never dreamed of. You can do things you never thought you could do. There are no limitations except the limitations of your own mind. Albert Howard, an American writer around the same time, says, man is not what he thinks he is, but what he thinks he is. For those of you who've studied Transcendentalism, Ralph Waldo Emerson says, a man is what he thinks all day long. Somebody that spoke to me early in my journey on the spiritual path was William James, who wrote a book, Varieties of Religious Experience, among many others. He says the greatest discovery of my generation is that human beings can alter their lives by altering the attitudes of their minds. Are you getting the idea that we are empowered? You've heard this, Henry Ford, whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. Somebody recently shared with me the Food Channel is now talking about positive thinking. It's recently said your mind is like tofu. It tastes like whatever you marinate it in. Our friend Charles Fillmore reminded us in his book, Revealing Word, thoughts are a mental vibration or an impulse. Every thought clothes itself in life form according to the characteristics given to it by the thinker. And Albert Einstein elaborated, I'm sure he was quoting Charles Fillmore and then building on that. Einstein says, everything is energy and that's all there is to it. Match the frequency of the reality you want, and you cannot help but get that reality. It can be no other way. I just love when silent science supports spiritual principle, don't you? We do create our lives by our thoughts. And as soon as we wake up to that concept, immediately after that, we have to wake up to the idea and start asking ourselves, what thoughts am I entertaining? I had a heck of a week this week. And I have to tell you, I really tremble in my boots sometimes when I select what my lesson topic is going to be, because I know I get to live it the whole week before. And some things happened this week that I found upsetting. And I spent a lot of time thinking about how upset I was. You never did that, do you? And I found myself sitting in the kitchen one day thinking about how upset I was and how the world wasn't treating me the way I wanted it to treat me. And I thought, Laurie, wake up, girlfriend. What are you thinking about? What are you doing with your thoughts? Is that how you want to feel? Well, of course not. So then I said, okay, Laurie, I had a little chat with myself. I said, how do you want to feel? And I started writing down, well, I want to feel this, and I want to feel that, and I want to be loved and appreciated. I want to be respected. I want to be successful. You know, all the things we all want. And once I started jotting those down, I very consciously shifted my thoughts from the things that were upsetting me over here to the things I wanted to create. Those of us on the spiritual journey get to make that choice every single day. We may have to make that choice several times a day. We may have to make that choice several times an hour. But we are empowered people. We are awake to what we're doing with our thoughts, and we are empowered to what we want to create, and we have the power to create that with our thoughts. Are you empowered or impaired? Monitor your thoughts and then consciously choose those that you would like to entertain, because those are the thoughts that are going to create your life from this moment forward. And so it is.